From the WATE.com Digital Center, answering your legal questions, this is Ask Isaacs. Now, here's Lori Tucker and attorney Greg Isaacs.
Hi, everyone. Good Wednesday afternoon to you. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for joining us here. We are, Greg, going to talk about a case that has a lot of people talking, especially on social media and on GoFundMe, but that's a separate issue. Well, let's talk about this mom in a rural area in Georgia who got in big trouble with the law after her 10-year-old son, he's now 11, but at the time this happened, he was 10, was seen walking along a road less than a mile from home going into town. The mom was arrested. You can see the arrest happening right there on camera. This is from police body cam, saying that Brittany Patterson was arrested on suspicion of reckless conduct after she left the child home alone to take the other child to the doctor. So this raises a whole lot of questions with many parents out there. What are the rules for this, if there are any, when letting your child walk somewhere? She left him home alone. She says she didn't know he was going to do that. But she also refused to sign something, and we'll talk about that as well, that the attorneys brought up. But what are your thoughts about this, just at the offset?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, we all hear of latchkey children, children that have gaps between school and their parents' work schedules, so they're left unattended for a period of time. People that leave children momentarily in vehicles. And it's interesting in doing a deep dive on this, Lori, what is permitted in terms of leaving a child unattended. And in looking at it, each state has a different either recommendation or legal requirement for leaving children unattended. For example,
let's start with Tennessee.
Let's start with Tennessee. Tennessee, there is no legal cutoff for leaving a child alone. The parent is supposed to look at not only the biological age of the child, but that child's level of maturity. Tennessee is like a lot of states that has a aspirational or suggested age, and it's 10 years old.
Wow. So why is she in trouble?
Well, it's interesting. Georgia, their aspirational age for leaving a child alone is 9 years old. So if she followed her own state's recommendation, the child was 10 at the time, so he was within the realm of being allowed legally to be left unattended. But I think what the kicker in this case was the child was seen unattended walking down a public roadway, and that what caused some complaints to law enforcement and triggered all of this scrutiny.
Is that where endangered child would come into play?
Yeah, and what you would be charged with, for example, in Tennessee, it would be child abuse and neglect. They lump it in. It's a terrible thing to be lumped into if you're charged because, you know, you're in there with people that have you're in a category of people that have physically abused children, sexually abused children. But here's what this charge was. It was a reckless neglect charge, and that was basically letting a 10-year-old walk down a roadway unattended. So you have a lot of variables. You have traffic, you have stranger danger, all that kind of factored in. But to me, the really interesting part of this is the mother was given a choice, and that was install a GPS, kind of like Life 360 on the child's
phone to track
phone,
her son,
and sign a parenting safety plan. And she said, not only no, but H no, because I didn't do anything wrong. I'm not admitting guilt, and so they're at a legal standoff.
Let's listen to what the mom had to say.
I just felt like I couldn't sign that, and that in doing so would be agreeing that there was something unsafe about my home or something unsafe about my parental decisions, and I just don't believe that.
What do you think about that, Greg?
You know, I could argue that with both ways.
Right.
One, if the law is a 9-year-old can be left unattended, and that's just aspirationally suggested in Georgia, so there is no hard and fast cutoff. I could see how she would be indignant. So I see two separate issues. One, the age of the child, maturity of the child, and the other is the child wasn't just left home alone.
At home.
The child was walking down a public street or thoroughfare. So
that's a whole new territory then.
That's a whole separate issue. So you have those two parallel trains. But it was interesting to look throughout the country, and the majority of the states in the United States do not have a legal cutoff. Now,
Interesting.
Illinois is the most stringent, and it's not a
They are.
suggested cutoff. It's 14 years old.
And that's to be left home alone.
Home alone. Next is Colorado with 12. The Plain states tend to be the most inattentive states. 7 years old is their suggested.
Leaving a
cutoff.
7-year-old at home alone.
It is. One thing that comes up all too frequently is leaving a child unattended in a car while a parent just thinks they're going to run in and run out.
But it's okay. You leave and I think it's wrong, just personally. Obviously, you put your child at such risk, but you got to take the keys out. You got to lock the door. If they're older, if they're younger, you've got to take them with you.
Well, let's talk about the cutoff. In Tennessee, you are not allowed to leave a child unattended in a car unless they are under the age of 7. If you
Still really
isn't that
young.
remarkable?
Yes.
And if you want another sibling to monitor or babysit while they're in the vehicle, that sibling or individual has to be at least 13. And it's not only do they have to be at least 7, but there has to be a finding that the child's health, safety, and welfare is endangered by being left in a public place in a car, that the car is running, or that the keys are in the vehicle.
These days, you just do not know.
But it's remarkable, and when you saw the social media fallout on this, the issue with the mother and the 10-year-old, I was astounded when you go state by state how nationally there really are no parental or legal guidelines as it relates to leaving children unattended, latchkey parents, etc.
Fair, unfair for the law, if you will, going after this mom. What do you think they're trying to make an example? Do you think maybe this child, what are some of the parameters here? Do you think maybe the child was seen wandering before?
In every case, when you have law enforcement that deals with juveniles, parental abuse or neglect, dependency neglect is what we call it here in Tennessee, it's just a variety of factors, and what the litmus test is, what is in the best interest of the child?
Yeah.
So what you do is, it's not such a strict legal determination, but a holistic approach where, for example, if this was Tennessee, they would have talked about the type of roadway it was. Was there danger?
He in the middle of the road?
Middle of the road.
Yeah.
They would have interviewed the parents and determined what type of home environment the child had. But at the end of the day, it was a very benign request. That is, simply put a Life 360 or a tracker app on your son's phone, not an ankle monitor, and just say you're going to be more vigilant going forward. And she said, hell no, I won't go.
So what tends to happen next in a case like this?
In a case like this, my understanding is it's a misdemeanor offense, but it could create some parallel custody issues. So, I think cooler heads will prevail, but it's already, the train has left the station because, this mother was, as we saw on the video, handcuffed, placed in the back of a police cruiser, arrested, fingerprinted. So, law enforcement's treating it serious, but I think she was indignant that someone had questioned her ability to parent her child. Yes.
Yeah.
And there's 27 shades of gray between black and white, and was that degree of parenting reasonable or in the best interest of the child? I think it could be debated both ways.
So she could face, up to a year in jail and a $500 fine?
In theory, but what you don't want is to have a series of complaints that can be used against you in the future if there's allegations of dependency, neglect, etc. So, that's understandable, but I would like to know more, but once again, it is really interesting that we typically in this country don't have any hard and fast lines of demarcation when a child can be left alone.
And it doesn't meet that in Georgia in this case, if you look at the age alone.
Well,
Unless
in Georgia,
there are mitigating factors.
It's 9. So
Yeah.
that parent was clearly within their rights to leave that child alone. But now again, part of
On the road.
on the road.
Yeah.
On the litmus but the litmus test is not only the biological age of the child,
Yeah.
but also the maturity level of the child. But Lori, when you think about it, you have parents that are good parents that have compelling reasons to have the dynamic of a latchkey kid or leaving someone alone. When you have that gap between school and work, when this parent had to take a child to the doctor. So
Some might argue take brother with you.
the waiting room might have been a much safer environment than walking to the local
There you
convenience
go.
store.
You want to talk more about this at 5:30?
Let's do it.
Okay. Thanks for being with us.